This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so it works fine. So I will start sharing my screen and show you some of general things on our project. Okay, I suppose it's okay. Perfect. So RECONNECT was a project that we submitted for the first call of the Interreg Balkan Med projects back in the 2016. The project had a start date in the September of 2017 and it's still ongoing. We had some modifications and some extensions requested since we have delays. You know, everyone, that we have this pandemic and it's really hard to work under these circumstances. But anyways, RECONNECT was submitted under the priority axis 2, which was for environment and that specific objective biodiversity, which meant to tackle the challenges of promoting connectivity and the transnational ecosystem integration. So for this project, we had several partners. The lead one was the Institute of Marine Biology, Biotechnology and Aquaculture in HCMR Crete. We have two partners from Cyprus, the Department of Biological Sciences at the university and the Department of Fisheries and Marine Research. They will be presenting later on, other partners will be presenting later on several aspects of the project. We have the management agency of the Dodecanese protected areas in Greece. We have the Ecosystem of Biodiversity, Institute of Biodiversity and Ecosystem Research in Bulgaria. We have the International Center for Research on the Environment and Economy based in Athens. And we had a partner from Albania also, but it was really, we had some difficulties in working there, so you will not hear on that part of the project. We also have some observer partners that were meant to guide us through all this implementation. So our main challenge was how to develop set practices to manage marine protected areas and Natura 2000 sites against the significant pressures that they face. We wanted to establish a joint strategy and a joint protocol to manage these ecosystems, of course, under the EU legislation framework, so respecting the MSFT and the WFT directives. And we aim to develop a network that would continue to be effective even after the ending of the project. So how we're going to do that? We had some overall objectives and some specific objectives. Some of the specific objectives were to identify and map all the key habitats of our study sites and evaluate also the socio-economic and the cultural approaches. All these are relevant to the things that you will be listening later on from other presenters. We wanted to find new tools to involve in the management process based on genetic and functional diversity, things that are overall and generally neglected sometimes. We wanted to engage citizens in the monitoring and conservation activities because of the extra power that they can bring in the table. And last but not least, we wanted to establish a decision support system to enhance ecosystem managers in their day-to-day management basis on our study sites. And this is why we are all here today and why we have gathered for this workshop. So we have developed. There's a delay. Okay, we have developed maps that you will visualize afterwards. We are writing down best practice protocols to monitor the MPAs and using also citizen science activities where relevant. We have built the decision support system And we're also building the handbook of management practices that will support the management authorities. I will not bore you a lot with these results. So probably what you have all heard the term marine protected areas and MPAs. I think people in this audience know about it, but just a few words on it. Marine protected areas are supposed to be enforced so that productive management of natural areas can be performed. Marine protected areas can be conserved for a number of reasons, including biodiversity, economic resources, species protection. Most of the times in Greece, for example, they have been MPAs have been enforced and have been effective because of the species protection and because of keystone species that are in several areas. They are created with delineating zones most of the times, where they have permitted and non-permitted uses within that zone. Sometimes this is not the case because it takes a lot of time for legislations to actually go through and be ratified and enforced, but generally that's the main idea. And it's very important to have an in-depth knowledge of the area so that you can define these ecological boundaries and this zonation in the best way, let's say. It's a work in progress. It's not something that is set in stone. So it's every marine protected area needs to be revisited from time to time because these certain things might change. So for the RECONNECT project, we had 3 study areas. You will hear more about them in the presentations that follow. In Greece, we had the marine protected area of Northern Carpathos and Saria. It's located in the island of Carpathos, as you can see in the picture. It has 3 main marine habitat types like Posidonia beds, shallow bays, and reefs. And it covers about 5,000 hectares of sea. In Cyprus, we have the marine protected area of Cavo Greco. It's located on the southeastern part of the island. It has also terrestrial and marine area, and it has the habitat types that we identified in Carpathos, but also it has sandbanks. In Bulgaria, we have the Gradina Zlatna Rybka, I cannot pronounce it well, marine protected area. It has the largest marine part of the three study sites of the project. It has also sandbanks as Cavo Greco and reefs, as we have in Carpathos. So our main aim is to find ways to enhance protection and conservation of marine protected areas that have high ecological and economical value under a harmonized socio-economic and legal framework. So this is the overall objective behind the project. Here, I leave you with our social media channels. You will, if you want to see and read more about it. As I told you, the video of this workshop will be uploaded later on at our YouTube channel, so you can be able to revisit it anytime you want. I don't know if you have any questions at this point. If not, maybe we can also continue with our next presentations. Okay. I don't see any questions on the chat or people raising hands. So the next presenter will be Dimitris Klitou, which was an external expert of the DFMR in Cyprus, and he will talk about the study site in Cyprus, and he will present us more about it. So I will pass on the presenter rights to Dimitris.
Hello. Hello everyone, can I share my screen?
I think you can share it from now on.
I'm sharing my screen, can you see it?
Yes, we can see it, yes.
Yes. Okay, good. So hello everyone. My name is Dimitri, I'm a marine biologist, the head of Marine Environmental Research Lab. And for the RECONNECT project, we were the external subcontractors of Department of Fisheries and Marine Research here in Cyprus. We basically took over the tasks of DFMR in this project. So in this presentation, I will briefly talk to you about the legislation, regulatory framework in Cyprus overall, and also Gabo Greco. Present some information on Gabo Greco and some research that is ongoing or has been completed recently, and finish off with discussing the main threats or risks to the marine environment of Gabo Greco. All right, starting off with the first one. It's good to mention that the Natura 2000 network in Cyprus was initiated in 1999 with the whole aim to protect habitats and species and to prevent degradation and implement the Habitats Directive and Birds Directive. Currently, the 63 sites in the Natura 2000 network in Cyprus, most of them terrestrial. A large area is covered, 1,789 square kilometers. There's 48 habitat types in Annex 1, 13 of them are priority. 38 Annex 2 species, 14 of them are priority. In total, there are 58 Annex 2, 4, and 5 species, including mammals, reptiles, amphibians, arthropods, 1 fish, and 18 plants. Regarding the marine environment, there's 5 protected habitats in the Habitat Directive. The sandbanks, Posidonia, which covers almost like a belt the whole island, coastal lagoons, rocky reefs, and submerged or partially submerged sea caves. And we have 4 marine protected species, 2 the turtles, reptiles, and 2 mammals, seal and Turcios concados above. Cyprus has several designated marine areas under various protection regimes. We'll talk about the Natura 2000 sites, MPAs. There's one spawning area, a turtle nesting site, and artificial reefs which are deployed all around the island by the authorities. Here you can see the map with the marine Natura 2000 sites, which are the ones, 6 sites pointed on the map with the arrows. There's some area here in Lara Beach, turtle nesting area. There's marine protected areas as well. There's also in Cape Greco, our study site, is currently an MPA. There's also an island here in the Bahamas. And there's several artificial reefs deployed, Paralimni here, Yanapa, Limassol, Funda Vesuvii, Paphos, which are currently protected by, there is no fishing allowed in those areas. There's also, as I mentioned, 2 important offshore areas. One is the Natura 2000 proposed offshore offshore area called Oceanis, which is a huge area. And the other one is Eratosthenes seamount, which also there's fishery restrictions that are applied here. It's a very pronounced feature in the Eastern Mediterranean, the underwater seamount, and should be protected. And currently, with these two big offshore areas, the percentage of marine protected areas rises to 19%, which is a number almost double the IC target, which is 10%. For Cabo Greco, the pilot study site in RECONNECT project, we focused in this southeastern tip of Cyprus. Some information on Cabo Greco as far as regulatory framework goes. In 1992, it was declared a national forest park. In 2004, it entered the Natura 2000 network. 2005, it became a site of community importance according to the Habitats Directive. 2007, a SPA, Special Protection Area, and quite recently, the regulation prohibiting fishing activities at the tip of Cabo Greco, establishing no fishing zones, was approved by the Parliament around on the Biodiversity Day, actually, of the year 2018. So this is the regime right now in Cabo Greco marine protected area. There's the wider areas with no color here. The blue stripe areas is buffer zones, is where only fishermen, professional fishermen are allowed to be active. And the fishing, the red area, the tip of Cabo Greco is actually no fishing allowed whatsoever from professional or recreational fishermen. It's a total area of 1.6 square kilometers and captures from 0 meters to 50 meters depth. Regarding some research that was conducted or is being conducted on Cabo Greco, and I will mention some efforts in the upcoming slides. In 2013 was the first mapping effort in the area. 2016 there was a 2-year tender aiming to monitor the native and alien species, both fish but also invertebrates and sessile benthic macroinvertebrates and macroalgae. And this was done on a seasonal basis. 2017, we have 2 European projects. One is a RECONNECT project, of course, and the other one is a 4-year life project, RELIONMET. RELIONMET aims to tackle the lionfish invasion. In 2019, 3 more projects that kickstarted. One is the Fishes Life project, and this is an action which is particularly important for Cabo Greco, assessing the existing fishery management measures. The MAVA project met plan for the method algae in the intertidal zone, and the mapping of those habitats, and of course a big tender that aims to map in higher resolution the habitats of whole of Cyprus, but also Cabo Greco, and there's more work conducted on caves as well, compared to this other tender which did not include the caves. And in 2020, we got this United Nations RACSPA project to assess the vulnerability of Poseidon Cyanica meadows to fishing activities in Cabo Greco. So I was involved in quite a lot of these surveys. I was a project manager of this tender here, the field service to record the species. I was involved in RECONNECT as an external subcontractor of the FMR. I'm the scientific coordinator of RECONNECT. I'm one of the project in the steering committee and project managers of the Cyprus habitat mapping conducted in 2019 recently. It was ongoing at the moment, and I was the project manager of this RASFA project in 2020. So I was quite involved in most of these projects. About the monitoring surveys that are being carried out, I would like to mention that DFMR has a lot of sampling stations, is monitoring a lot of different characteristics and features and means to meet the EU obligations, direct obligations for WFP, Posidonia oceanica, macrofauna are monitored on an annual basis, on a seasonal basis. DFMR is monitoring phytoplankton and water sediment chemical characteristics. For the MSFD, they monitor all the above in addition to those zooplankton, phytoplankton on a seasonal basis and thick marine litter on a semi-annual basis. And for the nitrate directive, the water analysis is conducted on a seasonal basis. Overall, there is good and high ecological status in Cape Greco. Using this biology method, of course. About the different marine habitats that are found in Cabo Greco, we have the sandbanks in the shallow. Characteristic species in those sandbanks is the Cimodosea nodosa, which attracts many green sea turtles, by the way. The rocky reefs is very rocky, that area, so this has a lot of rocky reefs. In some of those areas is dense canopies and forests of Cystosira. In the semi-light environments, you have calcareous communities dominated by lithophyllum, but also sponges and other red algae and brine zones as well. We have the submerged or partially submerged sea caves. There's quite a lot in that in Cape Greco. There's also monk seal. It's a monk seal habitat. But there's quite a lot of caves. Some of them are well known for the touristic dive tourism in the sea, usually the dive tourism industry. But there's some deep ones unexplored. That seem to be interesting. And of course, there's, especially at the tip, there's very healthy seagrass meadows. And of course, they are a priority habitat, very important, and they host hundreds of species depend on these meadows. Of course, this right photo shows a Bina mobilis. We haven't seen this for a while now, at least a living specimen. The new tender that is mapping, it aims to map the whole Cyprus is ongoing, and we expect that it will yield very important results. And now this brings me to the final topic of my section of my presentation, to discuss a bit, describe the main threats, the main risks to the marine environment of Cabo Greco. We'll start off talking about the alien non-indigenous species, tourism, fisheries, and marine litter. These, for us, we consider to be the most important threats. Starting off with alien species around the whole Cyprus, for several reasons. First of all, the high temperatures of the water. Usually those Cape Greco is 1-2 degrees higher seawater temperature than the rest of Cyprus. Also the currents, the close distance from Syria. All these factors, for some reason, the non-indigenous species are more concentrated, more abundant in this region of Cyprus compared to the southern coasts or even the southwestern coasts of Cyprus. The 2-year project that we carried out and we were monitoring the ichthyofauna and benthic sessile invertebrates macroalgae on a seasonal basis, we found out that especially for mollusks and fish, chordates, and in some cases echinoderms as well, but also arthropods, crabs, and shrimps. They were quite high, the alien abundances compared to the natives. And towards the end of the project, we reached almost 0.5 ratio, which means 1 alien for every 2 native species. And this was especially pronounced in the mollusca and chordata fish, but also for echinoderms. So there is a problem in that in Cape Greco in terms of invasive species which pose a threat. And recently we carried out this black spot project. We completed it recently, like still pending some final presentations, and we had 45 sampling sites. We had 135 transects. When we were monitoring with using visual sensors the fish communities, and we found out that in the strict protection area, in the no fishing zone, actually the abundance of non-indigenous species was quite higher than in the areas where there is fishing allowed. For biomass, it's not the same story exactly. Biomass, we have also the partially protected area having, together with the strict protection area, a high biomass of non-indigenous species. This area, as I said, is very important. Many alien species have been imported from this area using citizen scientists. 6 new species, 6 new records in Cyprus, 3 new branches, the sea urchin diadems, the other Gabizoroceus, and the fish Cheilodopteros novenstriatus. They have all been new sighting records coming from this area involving citizen scientists, which is also the core of the RECONNECT project. We'll be running this 4-year life project with LionNet for the lionfish, and as expected, this area, Cabo Greco, is a lionfish hotspot. Comparing the whole of Cyprus, this is where you find the highest concentrations of lionfish. In single dives now, we can remove hundreds of lionfish. In the recent derby we did in Cabo Greco area, we removed close to 400 lionfish in a single day with about 30 divers in the water. While if you do the same sampling effort in Bajos area, you won't find that many. You will only find a few lionfish if you're lucky. Another main threat of Cabo Greco is tourism. And there's many vessels, boats that are moving every day in Cabo Greco. I would say a number of 30 to 50 vessels, and if you consider the rental vessels, this number may go to even 100 in a single day in peak days of August, touristic holiday season. Of course, the tourists, they party, many of them, there's a problem of the noise, of the engines, there's a problem of marine litter, which is most of the marine litter we find there is related to these touristic activities. Of course, the anchoring of the boats is another major problem. There are some buoys, anchoring points where big vessels can tie on the buoys to reduce the anchoring damage, but overall there are many boats that anchor in seagrass meadows, for example, or in rocky reefs, and causing damage with the anchor. Fisheries is another pressure that should be considered, especially if you consider the illegal fishing activities. Remember that 2 years ago, there's a new protection status. There's a buffer zone in blue, protection zone, the no fishing zone in red. Is the tip, the most important area, in double record. For the Rockstar project, the whole purpose was to identify, to map the fishing activities. This was a very compressed but intense project. We did lots of surveys, but also lots of questionnaires where we engaged with professional recreational fishermen, but also stakeholders. And we try to assess the sensitivity and the social. First of all, we try to assess the socio-economic impacts of invasive fish species and how they affected the fisheries sector. But we also assess the sensitivity of marine habitats, Posidonia oceanica, to regulated but also unregulated fishing activities. There was surprising quite a lot of evidences. We were out there many days and we saw many people illegally fishing in the zone. But also this information was also coming from the questionnaires, and also both professional and recreationals, they have reported to us many incidences of illegal fishing activities that go unregulated in Cabo Greco. There's little enforcement. We have set up 12 sampling areas where we set monitoring systems for permanent monitoring systems for Posidonia oceanica, and we assess the risk, which I must admit that after doing all the analysis, we concluded that the risk from fisheries on Posidonia oceanica is quite weak. It's weak because there is no dredging. There is no trawling, and the fishing activities that take place are, apart from overfishing the community, the main impact is ghost fishing, is abandoned fishing gear. Another project that is coming up to the surface is a This is Life project. If I'm not mistaken, this is like almost 4-year project. I thought it was more, but one of the actions, they aim to assess existing fisheries management measures in this site. So I hope that this will be some changes. Marine litter, in terms of marine litter, we did, of course, the RECONNECT field work, which was quite intense back in late 2018. And we chose 3 sites, one on the south side, Canyon, Chapel, and Cyprus, 2 very touristic sites in terms of dive tourism. Lots of divers visit these areas. Of course, we found litter in all of the transects we carried out at different depths. Much of it was rope and fishing gear, but there was a lot related to also touristic activities like tin cans or plastic bottles or glass bottles or cigarette bags. So our numbers in these surveys indicated that it was quite high, the marine litter compared to other areas or other surveys, which are not a lot, by the way. This coming from the RAXFA project, this map we generated, we had, as I said before, 45 study sites, and we conducted at each study site 4 transects per liter, benthic liter. And as you can see from this figure, dominant liter was fishing nets, fishing lines, and fishing related. Okay, this is basically fishing related liter, sorry, but you can see that especially the area on the northern side is a lot. It is where touristic activities concentrate. There's a lot of litter. We need many kilos of litter during those surveys, and most of it was fishing related. And I want to finish up by saying that Cabo Greco is a very important site for Cyprus and engages a lot of different stakeholders. And stakeholders coming from the authorities like the Department of Fisheries and Marine Research, the Department of Environment, but also the Ministry of Tourism and also the Shipping Ministry. There's local communities that depend on the ecosystem services of Cabo Greco, like the Ayanapa municipality. There's a lot of businesses that take people out to see this beautiful, visit this beautiful site, and tens of different dive shops, high number, dozens of dive shops in the area, with thousands of tourists visiting to dive the area. And of course, there's other stakeholders like researchers, like NGOs, fisheries groups, diving centers, all expressing interest in the site. What's important is that the formula needs to be found, to find the formula to make all these people work together. And I hope we will achieve this in the near future. Already there's a lot of collaboration in many of these stakeholder groups. That's all I had. Thank you for everything. And if you have any questions, I'll be very happy to answer them. I will stop sharing my now. Should I stop sharing my screen or leave it on for?
It's okay. I will pass on now to. I will pass on the presentation now to Maria Karayani, or I don't know if Maria or Ioana will do the presentation from the Management Authority of Karpathos.
Hello. Hello.
Hi, Maria.
Hi.
I will give you now the presenter rights.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Let me. Not yet, but can you
No?
try again maybe? Ah, yes, now it's there.
Okay.
Okay, so Maria will continue with the presentation on the study site in Greece, which was the island of Karpathos.
Yes. First of all, I want to tell you that the chairwoman of management agency couldn't be with us today, and she apologizes for that. But she sends her best wishes for our workshop. So, in Greece, there are 4,046 Natura sites. 28% of the country is terrestrial, and 20% of the country is marine area. The study site in Greece is Northern Carpathos and Sarian coastal marine zone. The two islands, Carpathos and Saria, belong to the Dodecanese complex in the South Aegean region in Greece. And the protected area includes the northern part of Carpathos, the island of Saria, and the surrounding coastal marine zone. Management agency of the Dodecanese protected areas is responsible for the study site and formally established in 2002 as management agency of Carpathos and Saria protected areas. Management agency is based in Onlibos, in Carpathos, and is now responsible for 29 Natura 2000 protected areas in the Dodecanese complex. Management agency is responsible for the protection and management of the Monachus local population and its habitat, the protection of the terrestrial, coastal and marine habitats, the preservation of fish stocks and the marine natural environment, and the public environmental education. Aiming at the awareness of the public, management agency has established an information center at the port of Diafani in North Carpathos, in which visitors can be informed on the characteristics of the area. In August 1996, the area proposed as site of community importance, and 10 years later, in September, confirmed as site of community importance. In October 2001, classified as a special protection area, and in March of 2011, designated as special area of conservation. Today, the protected area of Northern Carpathos and Saria and coastal marine zone is a special protected area and special area of conservation. The area consists of 46% of marine area and 54% of terrestrial area. Saria Island is of great aesthetic and archaeological value and important for the avifauna of Greece. Saria is one of the most important bird areas, and some species are Bonelli's eagle, Eleonora's falcon, and Mediterranean stag. Olibos, Diafani, Tristomo, Avlona, and Brukuda are villages which are inside the protected area. Olibos is a traditional village built at an altitude of 3,000 meters, and characteristic of the village is the preservation of the traditional landscape, the culture, and the traditional costume of people. Diafani is a port on North Carpathos, the second largest port, located northeast of Olympus, and is a small traditional fishing village. Avlona is a village located in Carpathos, accessible by automobile, and there are hiking trails which lead to the ancient coastal settlement of Brukunda at Tristomo village. Brukuda, located north of Avlona on the north coast of Carpathos, it was one of the four ancient cities of Carpathos. Part of the wall of the Hellenistic period and curved tops are preserved. Tristomo Gulf, located on the north coast of Carpathos. It's the only natural port in the area and the most important marine area of Carpathos. It is a fishing area with great productivity, and at the entrance of Gulf, there is a coastal wetland of North Carpathos. Tristomo Gulf is accessible on foot via trails from Avlona or Diafani, or by boat. The quality and importance of the protected area is the typical geomorphology of Carpathos, which screens rocky shores and cliffs. The biodiversity of the site, indicated by the many rare and endemic species of plants and animals. The main impacts and threats with and around the site are overgazing, soil erosion, and fire. Some of the most important marine species in the area are the bottlenose dolphin, the Mediterranean monk seal Monachus monachus, the marine turtles green turtle and loggerhead turtle, and Pinna nobilis. Carpathos frog is an endemic amphibian of Carpathos in the northern part of the island. Also, the endemic salamander of Carpathos and marsh frog are reported amphibians of the protected area. Mediterranean thin-toed gecko, Turkish gecko, and oxalated skink are lizards located in the North Carpathos and Saria. Imported plant species are Campanula carpatha, endemic of Carpathos Island, and Silene holtzmanni. Some of the types of marine habitats in the protected area are sandbanks slightly covered by seaware all the time, Posidonia beds, reefs, and submerged or partially submerged sea caves. Sandbanks slightly covered by seawater all the time are elevated, elongated, rounded, or irregular topographic features, permanently submerged and predominantly surrounded by deeper water. Can be found in association with Posidonia beds and reefs, and are a component part of habitat of large shallow inleted bays. Posidonia beds are characteristic of the Mediterranean zone and ranging in depth from few dozen centimeters to 30 or 40 meters. They can withstand relatively large variations in temperature and water movement, but they are sensitive to desalination. Reefs are biogenic concretions or of geogenic origin. They are hard, compact substrata or solid and soft bottoms. Reefs may support zonation of benthic communities of algae and animal species, as well as concretions and corallogenic concretions. Reefs are in association with sandbanks, which are covered by seawater all the time, and sea caves. Sea caves situated under the sea or open to it, at least at high tide, including partially submerged sea caves. The bottom of sea caves and sites harbor communities of marine invertebrates and algae. The outputs of the mapping activities in the protected area of Northern Carpathos and Saria are that there is no significant growth fluctuations have been observed within the last years for the Posidonia beds. The investigated Posidonia beds are probably not facing major stressful events, and also individuals of Pinna from the study sites counted and the cells measured. That's all. If you have any questions.
Okay, so if there's not more from Carpathos, we will proceed with the study site in Bulgaria. Our colleague Dimitar Berov will present. I will make him now presenter. Find him.
Hi, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, yes, we can hear you
Okay,
fine.
so I should just share my screen and okay.
Perfect.
Okay, just a second. Yeah, I just want to make it full screen. I don't know how to do that. Just a second. Okay.
I think you can go to slideshow and then, okay.
Okay, so I hope you can hear me well, because my internet connection is there's some problems, but I hope everything works out. So I'm going to present to you some information about the study site in Bulgaria. As you all know, the study site in Bulgaria is the Natura 2000 site Gradina Zlatna Ribka in the Sozopol Bay in the south of the Bulgarian Black Sea coast. You can probably see it on the map here. It is a relatively small Natura 2000 site compared to the other maritime sites on our coast, but it is an important site because of the many types of habitats that are available there and the interaction of different stakeholders, communities, and processes that are happening there. The site covers both maritime and terrestrial area. It was originally established in 2008, covering the beach area and the Gradina Sozopol Bay, but in 2013, as part of the improvement and enlargement of the Natura 2000 networks in Bulgaria, the maritime site was added to the maritime area was added to the site, which basically covered the whole aquatory of the Sozopol Bay between the beach area and the island of Saint Ivan. And the north and the east coast of the Sozopol, old town of Sozopol, which you can see on the photo here. Currently, the Natura 2000 site doesn't have a designation act or a management plan. It has only been added to the network, but this is a process that's still going on in Bulgaria. I will talk about this a bit later. The site, as all other Natura 2000 sites, should be managed by the Ministry of Environment and Water and local environmental agencies. According to the standard forms, the majority of the habitats in the maritime part of the area is sandbanks, sandy bottoms with some seagrasses, but mainly zoobenthic communities with different types of sand. And there's a number of rocky reefs in the area. The area has not been surveyed in details until the RECONNECT project, so actually this was the main outcome of our project. Our mapping activities were carried out within the 2017-2019, and they targeted all types of habitats in the area: the sandbanks, the zostera seagrass meadows, and the rocky reefs. We managed to map well, the habitats, directive habitats 1110, 1170, MSFD broad habitat types and national set types, and we went also with the EUNIS level 2 and 3 habitats. We applied a number of different methodologies, geophysical substrate mapping and biological mapping of hard and soft substrates. You can see the map of the sampling locations and different types of activities that were carried out in the area. Of course, we'll talk about this data later, I think, in the next presentations. As an outcome of our survey, we managed to create a detailed map of the sediment types in the area. You can see that the majority of the sediments are coarse and fine and medium sands, which cover a large portion of the area of the bay, and a number of rocky reefs, which are about 9.5% of the area of the territory, of the Natura zone. This diversity of habitats, of course, brings a lot of challenges. as different habitat types need to be monitored with different methods, different frequency, and of course there are different pressures and threats for these habitat types. Just as a brief overview of these habitats, the typical rocky reef habitats in the shallow zone are the Cystoxera beds with Cystoxera barbata and Cystoxera bosphorica, which are some of the most biodiverse habitats in the Black Sea. We have abundance of these on the coastal zones of the City Ivan island and on the peninsula of Sozopo. Basically, we have the whole set of biodiversity of macroalgae and invertebrates and fish that live in the Black Sea in these small areas around the coast of Sozopo, which makes the site quite interesting for biodiversity studies, for monitoring, for scientific work, but also for tourism and general, just public getting to know the biodiversity of the Black Sea. Of course, we have the reefs covered with the black maso Meteorgo provincialis, which is also a very important habitat in the Black Sea. During the course of our project, unfortunately, we managed to witness the almost complete destruction and removal of these Mytilus reefs from our study site due to the impact of the Rapana venosa. You can see this snail here, which is eating on the mussels. It's an invasive species to the Black Sea, which has been in the area for almost 50 years, but in recent years it is very active and it's really removing mussels from the sea, from the rocky reefs. This actually happened last year, and it was an important contribution of our citizen science monitoring network. But unfortunately, the ecological status of this habitat is not good after last year. The other important habitats are the seagrass meadows and the sandy beaches on the two corners of the Sozopo Bay. We have 3 zoosterum seagrass meadows in very good ecological status, which are actually some of the best and most well preserved on our coast, according to our studies, which was they have been monitored by us in the recent 10 years and also within this program. And last but not the least, of course, we have the sandy bottoms, which cover almost 90% of the area of the maritime territory. Different types of sands with different zoobenthing communities, depending on the depth, on the sediment type, and on the exposition and wave exposure. It's a very diverse community, which also serves an important ecosystem function for the breeding grounds for fish, and which is a very important ecosystem service in the area, and a major point of interaction of biodiversity with local stakeholders. Is fisheries is a very important activity in this area. Briefly, I'll show you some outcomes of the environmental monitoring and changing ecological status in the area. More specifically, the improvement in water quality after the construction of the wastewater treatment plant in the area. Prior to 2015, there was no sewage water treatment in the area, so the wastewaters from the town of Sozopo and the adjacent towns and villages were dumped and treated in the bay, which created major ecological problems. You can see this area here was under severe pollution with degradation of benthing communities and bad water quality, at least in this part of the bay. In 2015, a wastewater treatment plant was constructed and opened, which took care of all the wastewaters. Now they are completely treated in the plant, and after treatment, chemical and partially biological treatment, the treated waters are released in the middle of the Sozopo Bay in deeper waters. Our monitoring showed drastic improvement in water quality after 2015. As you can see on these maps, the ones on the left are concentrations of phosphates in the water. There was a sharp increase in concentrations of phosphates way above the safe limits in the bay before 2013, especially in the eastern part. By 2015 and in 2018 during the project, these phosphates were completely missing. The same goes for nitrates, which were even more concentrated in the summer months when the majority of the wastewaters are dumped in the bay due to the increase in population because of tourism. Currently, this pollution is missing. This, of course, led to rapid improvement in water quality. The frequent phytoplankton blooms in summer are completely gone or back to normal levels as in the adjacent Black Sea waters. And the bottom hypoxia, which were typical for the summer months in the eastern part of the bay, are now completely gone. This, of course, led to improvement in water quality, ecological status of benthic communities in the eastern part of the bay, and of course to better ecological services provided by these ecosystems. Now to jump to the topic of usage of different stakeholders in the area. Sozo Bay is a very busy area, as I can say. Due to the long history of maritime work in the area, in the town of Sozo, there's a number of activities going on in the bay, which of course have been there way long before the Natura 2000 area appeared. And this brings a lot of questions for the management of the area. The major activities in the area related to tourism, of course. In the summertime, we have over 200 to 300,000 tourists frequenting the bay and the area around Sozo, which involves people using the beach area, boat activities, and all kinds of leisure activities. Of course, because of that, we had this major pollution of the water. The 20-fold increase in population led to pollution of the bay. We have extensive fisheries activities. Major fishing trawler vessels are based in Sozo, which also fish in the area, in the 2000 area. Of course, a number of small-scale fishers, hundreds and hundreds of licensed boats fishing in the areas. Also, the Natura 2000 area hosts some of the biggest aquacultures on our Black Sea coast. You can see around the island of Sveti Ivan. This is mussel farms. They have been there for almost 30 years now and are a major source of income and ecosystem services in the area. As I recently told you, have this change in the wastewater treatment plan and the usage of the area. Of course, some pound nets, which are also in the area very close to the tourist areas. So this brings a lot of questions and in terms of stakeholders and the conflicts of the use of the Natura 2000 area. I'll briefly just go through some of the management issues that are involved in that. One of them is the use of the beaches, which are owned by the government officially, but the lease to private companies as a concessions for a different number of years. On the beach of Gardina Zlatna Ribka, we have at least 3 of these companies operating. They take care of the beach area, which as you can see is also in the Natura 2000 zone. On the other hand, the waters, the bathing waters, which are managed by these companies, are also monitored and controlled by the Ministry of Health, which monitors the water quality according to the a number of criteria, and they have the authority to actually control what's going on there with the water quality and maybe shut down the beaches if there's pollution or not. Of course, tourism is not only on the beaches but also in the town of Sozo. As I said, there's over 200,000 visitors in the area in the summertime. Fisheries, as I said, is another major activity. We have 2 big fisheries ports adjacent to the Natura 2000 site, Sozo here, and in the west there is Chernomorets. Both of them are managed by the Ministry of Agriculture and the Environment Executive Agency for Fisheries and Agriculture. This agency also manages the use of the aquaculture farms and the pound nets. So again, we have a conflict there of use of the maritime area and what's going on there. To make the issue more complicated in terms of management, of course, we have the wastewater management. The wastewater treatment plant is managed by the water utilities company in the area. Their activities is controlled by the Ministry of Environment and Waters and the local Environmental Protection Agency. On the other hand, the impact of the possible pollution from these wastewaters are subject of management by the Ministry of Environment and the monitoring programs of the Water Framework Directive and the Maritime Strategies Framework Directive. So we have at least 3 different authorities taking care of more or less the same issue here. And on top of that, now we have this Natura 2000 zone, which, as I said, has been established, but there's no management plan prepared. And due to complex political issues, we currently still don't have a management plan. And we don't really know how this management plan will take care of this complex interaction of different authorities, stakeholders, usage of the bay. Yeah, so this is a very open question for discussion, which is something which needs to be really discussed in the near future. And we hope that the outcome of this project, including the decision support system, will help in that process, especially to our authorities. As a final note, I think the integrated maritime spatial plans that are currently developed for all European countries is really the way to go with this complex interaction of biodiversity and human activities. Okay, thank you. If there are any questions, we can discuss now or later.
Thank you, Dimitar. We are a bit ahead of schedule, so this was the time where we're going to have a small break. I think we should take the break and probably connect. Well, be back at 11:30 or something. I don't know if you agree. And then we can continue with the presentation of the habitat maps by Martina Nicolopoulou. So if this is okay with all of you, I will make a correction in the agenda, and I will put it and I will share my screen and they will show up so that people will know that we are a bit ahead of schedule and it will things will start earlier than they were supposed to. So yeah, if everyone is okay with that, then we can have our break and come back in 20 minutes or something.
Okay.
Okay, great. Okay, now we're back. I hope you all had some coffee in this short break. And I don't know if Martina, are you ready?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah.
Okay, I will now pass the floor to Martina Nicolopoulou, and she will present us a bit the habitat maps of our study sites and how you can interact with them. Let me make you presenter. Okay, so now you can share your screen.
Okay. So can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
And it's okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, so I will describe the visualization tool we use for RECONNECT habitat mapping. It's Medobis Viewer. Medobis is a Mediterranean node of ocean biodiversity information system. It's a WebGIS application based on open layers, and it was developed under Lifeboats Greece. So in order to access, we go to Lifeboats Greece and site. We click Virtual Labs, Medobis.
Martina, you're not sharing the screen. Just hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, now we see your screen.
Okay. So in order to access the Medobis viewer, we have to go to Lifeboats Greece and Virtual Labs, Medobis. We click Portal of Lifeboats. So here is Medobis Virtual Lab. We have first to register. So we have to go registration. No, Sorry. Here you have to make a registration, and then you go to LifeGods Greece portal. You click your email and password, and you log in. So here is Medobis Virtual Lab, Medobis Viewer. So here we have the, we use a OpenStreetMap as base layer. Here we have add and remove layers, so we can, we have also the latitude and longitude in decimal degrees and some other tools we will describe. So here we can click add layers on the left, choose reconnect. So here we have Bulgaria, Cyprus and Greece data. We can do sort or descending or ascending. We can just hide this column. We can choose, for example, let's go to Tristomo. It's a fishing area in Karpathos Island. We can choose the shallow bays with control Posidonia in Tristomo and reefs and Simodocha. Add layers, done. So here we can visualize the layers from Karpathos. You can zoom in, zoom out with this. You can go also zoom to previous extent. Here you can see the Show Legend pop-up window where we have used some styles to visualize the layers. If you can reorder the layers, and then if you want to see the attribute table of a layer, you click the layer and then you go down here to this arrow. You click so you can have the attribute table of each layer. Then let's remove layer or zoom to layer extent, so we can remove the layer and we can go to Cyprus, Cabo Greco. Add layer, done. Let's remove that here. So here is Cabo Greco. The data from Cyprus are in grid format. We will upload also the Greece and Bulgarian data in grid format of 100 meters with all the percentages and the values from that have been calculated from ICRE. So here you have Posidonia, sandy bottom and rocky bottom. You can choose, for example, again, you can see the legend, the styles. You can use the get feature info. You can click on a cell. So, sorry, I don't know. So yes, you can see the percentage of this cell in Posidonia, in rocky cell, and in sandy cell. Now let's go to Bulgaria. Here is Bulgaria, Gradina's Lanka Ribga. You can see also here the layers. You can see here the legend. Again, you have the mussel farms here. You can see the bathing waters. You can see also the attribute table. You can change pages if you have more pages here. And there is also this one, this tab, Save Layer. You can save your data in CSV format or KML. It's for the time being, it's deactivated for RECONNECT, but maybe I can show this with maybe another dataset from Adobe's. Let's say here, you can do save CSV. So you save your CSV and you can open it later, and you can also save or open KML and you can use Google Earth to open your data in Google Earth. So here is the data that I visualized and saved in KML. I want also to show you some more tools, but they are deactivated at the moment, but maybe it's useful to, if we decide to use them, to add them. It's, here, let me show you. Here we have Adobe's visual viewer, a tutorial viewer, and there is also a movie tutorial, a video tutorial I will upload. And we can see here, there is a query tab that I can add in RECONNECT's visualization. So you can make queries, and then after the query, you can have the results in the attribute table here, and you can save. I can show you here, sorry. You can save the results here, so of the query, and you can save here the results. And also there is, you can upload also a KML of different data if you want to see some other data with the habitat maps that we have uploaded. So you can have also this tab, upload KML. So that's it.
Thank you, Martina, for the presentation.
Yes, if you have any questions.
I have a short question, if I can ask.
Yes.
Thank you for the presentation. When we were doing the citizen science meetings and the workshops, we showed the functionality of the website, and people were really happy that they can actually see a real map of the study site and data on substrate types and areas. And one thing which was a bit of a problem was how to get people to get coordinates of certain locations. We managed to find a solution with this long menu on top. But my question is there other ways to get locations, like create a KML point or something, or is it only by copying the location from the cursor, like just copying the numbers?
At the moment, you can use this one, but maybe we can add it up a tool by drawing I don't know, polygon or point to see the longitude and latitude. I will search about this, and I can.
It will be extremely useful for our, especially for users from the scuba diving centers, because I mean they're not proficient in GIS, and yeah, if they can only click and get the locations, it will be really nice. Okay.
Okay, I will try to add this tool. So after I complete all the uploadings of the data, because I have also to upload the grid formats, I will try to add and activate again the tools.
Okay, thank you. It's just a feedback from our citizen scientists. That's all. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for this. And now we should proceed with the socioeconomic questionnaires. I don't know if Lydia or Achilleas will do the presentation. From my
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes, I should.
It's Lydia. I will start because Achilleas has another conference, and he will come later.
Okay.
He will undertake the second part of the decision support system.
Okay.
So
The username is admin, right? You're not. I will need to present them. Yes. So I think you can share your screen now.
Just a second. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, yes, I will start first of all to say a few words about the rationale behind economic valuation. I don't know if it's very clear to also the sound because we had some technical issues earlier. What is the meaning of the economic evaluation and the benefits of ecosystem services? In the natural and cultural resources economics, we consider all these resources, the natural and cultural ones, as a collective consumption goods. The issue with these evaluations, basically, is that these resources are not tradable in the markets. So we cannot exactly put a price on them, and the private markets end up in market failures, which means that due to the absence of actual price, the proper resource allocation. The problem with that is not only that we do not know exactly how much they cost, but basically the policymakers cannot put them in the public policy making and in management decisions. So the idea of the resource economics in projects like RECONNECT is to try to attach value in tangible and also intangible benefits that accrue from cultural and natural resources, not in order to commodify them somehow, but basically to reveal them in front of policymakers and in order to reveal them in the decision making and try to promote their preservation. Yes. Okay, I will try this more better. So first of all, I would like to say a few things about the ecosystem services that we had identified in the 4 study areas. We know that there are 3 types of ecosystem services in most of the study areas. Provisioning services, the dead leaks of seagrass and fish abundance, that some researchers put them in the regulating services. Then we have maintaining and regulating services such as the water purification, the protection from coastal erosion offered by the banquets, the maintenance of chemical and biological conditions, the protection of species, especially protected species, and a very important service of carbon sequestration. And then we have a very particular subcategory, which are the cultural services that accrue both from cultural resources and natural resources. These are mainly physical and intellectual interactions, the preservation of underwater cultural heritage, and also the aesthetic benefits. We chose to study some of them in order to be able to draw some common lines and decisions for all the study areas. So we studied the fish abundance, the seawater clarity, the protection from coastal erosion offered by the banquets, the carbon sequestration, then the aesthetic benefits, and the preservation of underwater cultural heritage. And we connect in all this evaluation. Basically, we evaluate the ecosystem services in parallel with the common threats and pressures in all the study areas. Threats and pressures are the violation of fishing restrictions, the cleaning in most of the areas, the cleaning of the shore from the banquets in order to make them more attractive to tourists, the anchoring of recreational boats, And in some of the cases, the building of tourism accommodations. I would like to say a few more details about the cultural aspects, because this is the most tricky in the research up to now. It is an aspect of ecosystem services that is very much understudied, because we do not have standardized methodologies up to now. The cultural services basically are related with seascape aesthetics, with non-use values of recreation and tourism, the one that is not tradable, I mean. The sense of belonging are aspects related to historical and cultural identity, educational services, and spiritual services. So in this project, we try to expand our methodology for the first time in order to try to capture these intangible values related to cultural aspects. This is extremely important for policy reasons, because with the cultural services, we can promote, we can use the cultural services in order to link the conservation of Posidonia, the conservation of seagrass, with tourism. The cultural services are related to the ability of seagrass to provide a shield on the archaeological layers. It has to do with aesthetic benefits provided by sea wildlife and existence of endangered species, the non-consumptive recreation, and the other are the regulating services already explained. I will try to not get so much in technical definitions. What is very important in this case is to explain that we are in a particular category of values which are called non-use values, and for that reason, the methodologies and the techniques there are very few techniques right now developed for non-use values, especially when we are dealing with marine ecosystem services. The idea is that we chose the choice modeling, and then I will just proceed to show a few examples of the result of the choice modeling. Here you can see the part of the questionnaire that has to do with quantitative aspects. Basically, the questionnaires are divided in two parts. The one has qualitative questions, and I will show you later a few results from the qualitative questions. But the most important part for us is the quantitative one, because this is the one that can show how much of people are willing to pay in order to have an increase of a particular ecosystem service, or how big is the loss for them when there is a decrease in a service. These cards basically are helping us to have a measure at the end of the benefit. We'll just explain a few things here. Every choice card is a hypothetical scenario, which includes a status quo. The status quo is always the doing nothing scenario, and the other two choices are usually an increase, or an increase of a small percentage, or an increase of a higher percentage. The fish abundance has to do with the presence of seagrass habitats. This provides food and nursery ground. The water clarity has to do with reducing current velocities and water turbidity, and is able to, means that we have a higher, let's say, light availability, which is important for growth. Aesthetic benefits has to do with biodiversity and food provision, habitat and refugee ground for marine flora and endangered species. And the carbon sequestration has to do with healthier climate by more carbon being captured by healthy seagrass. The trade-off among beach line section and from erosion and cleaning the beaches. We know that through sediment retention and hydrodynamic attenuation, the seagrass meadows are able to protect the beach line from erosion. So the deposits of the dead leaves are for us important sources of nutrients and serve for keeping the sediment budget. And two other attributes that we have evaluated is the preservation of underwater cultural heritage that I already explained, and the one is the restriction to fishing, which is not exactly an ecosystem service, but as I said earlier, it's one of the common threats, the violation of fishing restriction. So we put this in the evaluation, and we measure everything by checking how much people are willing to pay. So for doing that, we are using in most of the cases the entrance fee, except of the case of Cyprus case, that it's not exactly a ticket entrance fee, but a voluntary tax. And here we show a few examples from the results of the qualitative questions. I am choosing the case of Cyprus here. We asked respondents actually how much they agree with the fact that the marine protected areas can contribute to the well-being. And here you can see actually the results from the statistics. There were quite many questions, but I'm choosing just a few examples. 67% of the citizens in Cyprus feel that they are more connected with nature. They completely agree, actually, that they are more connected with nature. 27 just agree, and very few people disagree or are indifferent. 62% completely agrees with the fact that they feel free and healthy and relaxed in the MPAs, and 31% just agrees. And also 37% completely agrees with the fact that they feel somehow as part of something bigger. And 39% just agrees with the fact that they feel part of something bigger. 43% completely agrees with the fact that they receive unforgettable experiences, and only 39% just agrees. You can see that in all of the questions, except of one, there is a very small percentage of people who disagrees or is indifferent with the qualitative aspects of contribution to well-being. The same exists for other questions such as sense of belonging and traditional character of the fishing grounds. There is a photo missing here. The important part from the choice experiment is that basically it helps us with willingness to pay, actually, to be able to make comparisons and rankings among the restrictions. Restrictions are the restrictions to fishing mainly, and also the ecosystem services. And we are not exactly using this amount in order to put a tradable market on the tradable price on these resources, but basically we're able to see how much people are willing to pay in order to enjoy some extra well-being given by an increase of any of these estimated ecosystem services. If you have any questions, I try to not be very technical, and you will see later in the cost aspects by Achilles Vasilopoulos the rest of the part. Up to here, we explained actually how we evaluated the benefits. Then you can see the cost and how these two enter both in the decision support system.
Okay, thank you, Lydia. So, Sorry. Do you need more time for the evaluation of benefits and cost, or is it included everything you wanted to say in this part of the presentation?
Mainly these were the most important aspects, detailed regarding the benefits. And I guess you will see in the DSS how it comes with the aspects of the cost. The most difficult part, the most detailed one, was the whole econometric modeling behind the structuring of the attributes of the questionnaires, and then the evaluation of the benefits aspects. The cost actually assessment was basically based on literature review. So in most of the cases, we are doing the socioeconomic survey in order to address the benefits. Then we take the costs from mainly literature review and databases, and then we compare them both in order to come up with the net present values, let's say. And we put those two series in the to get the final results and put them in the DSS. This is how it usually works. This is how it worked in RECONNECT.
Okay, so I guess if we don't have anything more on the part of the questionnaire and evaluation, then, and if Achilleas is ready from his other workshop, then we can proceed with the actual usage of the DSS.
Let's see, because I think he was expecting later.
Yeah, because we are a bit ahead of schedule, but if he's not available, then we can have another short break, and then we can intervene when he will be ready.
Yes, so should we do it like that? Should we send him a message as soon as he finishes from the other project?
Christina and Lydia, hi. Hi, Eugenia, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So I just wanted to clarify one thing. All the DSS is based on Posidonia, or also to other endangered species, I don't know, like pigeon or mammals or whatever else there is there in the study areas.
We based actually the DSS on the Posidonia, and then we decided to include also the soft and the hard substrate. So in a way, we expanded a bit more to reveal even more benefits. However, we know that the substrates, soft and hard, doesn't have the same value as Posidonia. So we consider actually the areas that have very good ecological status, with soft and hard substrate, let's say. We consider them as bad quality Posidonia, just in order to be able to include them in the evaluation and not stick only to Posidonia habitats. Which, of course, it has a series of hypotheses behind, obviously, but we try to reveal as many values as possible.
But,
so at least the places with very good status are included.
So just a moment, because I'm not sure that I understood correctly. You consider the soft bottom areas as bad quality Posidonia areas?
The areas with soft and hard substrate actually that have good ecological status enter in the evaluation.
So, sorry, I cannot hear you very well. Can you repeat, please?
Yes, maybe. So we decided actually to include the soft and hard substrate with good ecological status
Yes.
in the DSS, but not exactly in the evaluation. In the socioeconomic evaluation, you saw the choice cards. The choice cards refer only to the willingness to pay related to Posidonia oceanica, to seagrass generally. So yes, the questionnaires are focused only on seagrass. Okay. But later with the DSS, exactly because we saw that we had data later, so we decided to use this data and
Okay.
expand a bit the research.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so maybe we can have a short break until Achilles is ready for the DSS. Thank you for your patience on that. It's really hard with all the online meetings. Everybody is participating in so many meetings, and it's really hard to organize an event. So maybe we can come back at 12:30. Lydia, what do you think?
Yes, so Achilles says us we will notify you directly as soon as he finishes the other presentation, and we can enter, I think, in 20 minutes. But just to make sure, I can give you a call or send a message here and go to meeting. Can we do like that?
Yeah, you can write it in the chat also. Let's say 12:30, and then if something happens and if we delay a bit, then we can write it on the chat.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just a bit more patience, and then we have actual DSS coming up.
Okay, good. So sorry for the mess. So this presentation is about the evaluation of ecosystem services, a work that has been done under Work Package 3. And it was the iCreate team who did the design, and then the partners collected the data, and the results were again analyzed by iCreate. So as a short introduction, although I'm sure you all know better than me that the seagrass meadows are protected in the EU by several directives, not just one. And the protection is of course necessary because there's a quick pace of extinction reaching almost 50% in some areas. So the present rates of loss could increase based on research, and since the 1990s it was estimated that around 7% per year of seagrass is lost. Now, in terms of the ecosystem services, which is also the main purpose of this work, and the ecosystem services that are offered by the seagrass are the provisions of material and food, coastline protection from erosion. This is again based on literature review, decrease of wave power and stabilization, sequestration, increase of fauna diversity, carbon sinks, provision of habitats and cultural and spiritual services, and also lots of organic carbon stored in seagrasses. So the aim of this work package, of this task, was to do evaluation of the protection of ecosystem services provided by the seagrass meadows in the three case study areas, so Greece, Bulgaria, and Cyprus. And this is, of course, necessary in order to capture the economic dimensions of benefits. And this is also a very important dimension that we need to take into account when we take any when we decide upon any investment that will destroy or will not protect these areas. And also this is the values that we are using later on in the next presentation for the DSS. So most of the values of the DSS of the biodiversity are non-use values based on the TEV classifications. We don't have market data. It would be okay, it would be good if we could say that this ecosystem services is sold at this price as we do with any other good, any other market good, and we can use that price. But unfortunately, this is not the case. So this is why we need other ways to infer that value. But here we need to stretch that what I present here and what we almost every time do. It's not a natural capital valuation exercise. That means that we do not attempt to estimate the value of any ecosystem. And personally, I don't believe that this is a correct way to go. What we are trying to do is to do some valuation of the ecosystem services lost due to changes in some ecosystem and apparently to the ecosystem services that are provided by this ecosystem. So that just keep that in mind. It could be that an area, for example, in our analysis will have zero value. This doesn't mean that the ecosystem has zero value, but that the changes relative to the status quo do not provide any extra or less ecosystem services. This is the bottom line. And this is also something that is misunderstood usually from non-economists, and they raise doubts about the results of any economic valuation study. So what are the relevant ecosystem services appraisals? First, we had a list of stakeholders, a literature review and consultation with stakeholders from the 3 MPAs. And we set the criteria for including or excluding ecosystem services. And these were that they should be relevant to each of the sites. Each one should be important for all the case studies. So we needed to have some kind of common ground for the 3 case studies. 4 as we started, but 3 as we ended up. And the third one is based on criteria linked with the output indicators of the project, which are to increase the number of visits, to support its size of cultural and natural heritage. So these were the 3 main criteria that helped us do the literature review to identify which are the relevant ecosystem services, and then have the bilateral meetings with the stakeholders to conclude upon which ones we will include in our study and which ones are not that important. And again, that does not mean that they are not important at all. There are several other ecosystem services that we don't include here, but again, they're very important. So the final list is the one also that I presented before. The final list of ecosystem services from seagrass and from Adjust and Habitats was fish abundance, seawater clarity, aesthetic benefits, carbon sequestration, protection from erosion, and preservation of underwater cultural heritage. So these ecosystem services satisfied all the criteria that we explained before. In terms of fish abundance, the presence of seagrass provides food and nursery ground. Of course, this is known. So this is the way, this is the link between the quality of seagrass and fish. Water clarity, the seagrass is able to increase light availability by reducing current velocities, so it increases purification. Regarding the aesthetic benefits, the Posidonia meadows and also Zostera are hotspots for biodiversity because they provide food, habitat, refuge, and nursery ground for many species. So the aesthetic benefits, for example, for divers, it's much higher when we have a good quality ecosystem. In terms of carbon sequestration, of course, this is well known that the seagrass is a main habitat that sequesters carbon. And in terms of beach erosion and cleaning practices, we found a link between trying to achieve some good tourism practices. So, sorry, I didn't change the slide. So yeah, in terms of beach erosion and cleaning practices. Now, what we also identified in the different areas is the different degree of law enforcement, that it was necessary for us to also, together with the ecosystem services, to include the different dimensions of policies that will be available to achieve these improvements or the protection of the ecosystem services. So the different degrees of law enforcement were mainly on violation of fishing restrictions and development of tourism. And for example, in Cyprus, there was the tourist accommodations that the experts from the area thought that they are important in any measure, in any management measure. Of course, the bunkings cleaning as well, and also the anchoring from recreational boats. How do we value all this? How do we value the ecosystem services and the policies? The value of ecosystem services was based in this work on the total economic value framework. This is the TEV framework is a framework that makes a link between qualified ecosystem services and their mappings. So then let me show the scheme first. So this is the figure of the total economic value. We assume that each ecosystem has use and non-use values. From the use values, we have direct and indirect use. So how people are directly interacting with the ecosystem and they are getting ecosystem services, such as enjoyment from diving or angling. We have indirect use like education and research. We have option values, so not directly used, but have the option to be used in the future. And in terms of the non-use values, we have the bequest and existing values. These are also the values that are very hard to measure with market prices. So the rest, we can somehow approximate them using what we call the reveal preference methods. So methods that use actual choices of people, tourists, for example, to infer the value of an ecosystem. So you compare two different places, one with a good status of seagrass and another with not so good status, and keeping all the rest the same. And you see how many people go to one place versus the other. From this and from what people spend to visit these places, you can infer the value, for example. This is something that you can do with market prices. However, for non-use values, this is not possible to do because you cannot distinguish between the two. And for this, we need the stated preference methods. The stated preference methods are based on the construction of hypothetical markets and administering questionnaires to people. In these surveys, participants are asked to directly place a value to the ecosystem. And when we say directly, not just ask them how much do you value this ecosystem, but actually they are forced somehow to make this assessment in their minds. We'll see later on how we did it in our study. And the services are described by unique characteristics. As we call them, they are the attributes. So each ecosystem is described by a different attribute, or each ecosystem service, sorry. And then we can observe what values do people place on each of these ecosystems. Of course, compare these ecosystem services. And from going to comparison and preferences over ecosystem services to preferences to monetary monetary estimations, of course, we always add a cost attribute. This could be a tax in each scenario, or an entrance fee, or whatever people have to pay to enjoy these ecosystem services. Of course, another misunderstanding here is that the payment vehicle we use in the questionnaires is not necessarily the one that we want to use for implementing any management structure. So the payment vehicle is just a way to monetize the ecosystem services. It's not the only way after we monetize to put a value in the ecosystem. From all these stated preference methods, in this task, we use the choice experiment, which is the method developed by Louvière and Hessner back in the 1980s. The choice experiment offers the opportunity to evaluate marginal changes in multidimensional choices. And when we say multidimensional choices, is like what we have here, where each management plan and its ecosystem is related, is linked to a variety of different ecosystem services. So when we decide on protecting or not protecting or extra protecting an ecosystem, we need to make some trade-offs between all these multidimensional, on these dimensions. And of course, this is why it is most appropriate for designing different management plans, because it actually enforces, I would say, so my mistake here, forces people to make choices between ecosystem services. Now, the levels of each attribute can be modeled using the choice experiment, and then the values can be attached to each level, as we did here. Why it is relevant for RECONNECT? Because we have most of the ecosystem services we consider are cultural, so bequest values, as we described in the previous chart, in the figure with the total economic value. So they are not easily measured by revealed preference methods, but also because there are too many attributes. Other stated preference methods, like the contingent valuation, are not appropriate in this study, or we will need to bombard people with several questions for each ecosystem service. So what is the choice experiment? The choice experiment is a list of choices that people have to make. So we present participants with a list of choices. Each choice card is like this one you see here. So the participant has to decide between three choices here: choice A, choice B, and choice C. And each of these choices presents different levels of ecosystem services. So for example, choice A has a high increase in fish abundance. Choice B has no increase relevant to the status quo. And choice C is always the status quo. So nothing changes. These are the attributes that we consider the ecosystem services, as we said before. And these are the levels that we consider. And again, the levels were based on consultation with experts in terms of what is the higher amount of ecosystem improvement we can achieve in the areas, in the study areas, and then broken down into smaller intervals. And each of these scenarios here always has a payment vehicle. So here we see tax. So choice A and choice B always have a tax, because they always have some kind of improvement or some kind of change relative to the status quo, while the status quo has no tax. And this was the case for all the choice cards. Now, how do we end up with all these choice cards? The first one is to decide upon the attributes and the levels. For RECONNECT, the attributes were related to the ecosystem services. So we had fish catches, and the levels, so the actual increase, decrease, or whatever in each of the choice cards had 4 different levels. So 5% increase, 20% increase, and 40% increase in fish catches. And of course the status quo, so no increase. So these were the 4 different levels that could go in any of the choice cards and in any of the choices. These are all the possible levels. In terms of water clarity, we had different levels here, mainly because in Cyprus and in Carpathos, a 60% decrease, we thought it could be too much, not actually us, but people who are in the area, because the water are clear already. So we only had 3 attributes here, 3 levels. Status quo 15 and 30% increase, while in Bulgaria, we also had the 60% increase. The cultural or aesthetic benefits, again, we had 30, 60, and 90% increase in all countries. Carbon sequestration, 5, 15, and 25% in all countries for levels. And then we go on with policies. The first one was beach line protection and cleaning beach from Posidonia bunkets. So we wanted to make people do in their minds the trade-off between having a very clean and nice beach versus taking away some of the protection benefits from not cleaning, from leaving the bunkets there. And there we had 3 levels, very high, medium, and maximum protection. Here, the status quo was different in each of the case studies, because in Carpathos, we had the highest max protection, so no cleaning, while in Cyprus and Bulgaria, we had very high loss because of very frequent cleaning of bunkets. Then we had restriction to fishing. Again, 3, 4, and 3 levels, no restrictions at all. Imposing fishing restrictions, extending the fishing restrictions, and again, the status quo was different in the 3 countries. The next attribute is presentation of underwater cultural heritage, with low increase and medium increase in Bulgaria and Carpathos, and here it's messed up. Yeah. So the preservation of underwater cultural heritage is also for Cyprus as well. But in Cyprus, we also had one more attribute, which is the increase in tourism. And this was added because the local partners thought that it's a very important element of any management plan that will be decided. So they wanted to see if people are pro or against increasing tourism. And here we have 3 levels: retain the existing level, 15% increase, and 30% increase. So people here had to make a trade-off between more better touristic products and higher revenues probably versus higher environmental services loss because of the crowd on all the the touristic establishments. And finally, we had the payment vehicle, which is the vehicle that helps us monetize any of the above ecosystem services here. And here we had an entrance fee for Bulgaria and Greece, while for Cyprus, we had the voluntary tax to the local population. And the amount of prices were 0. That was only for the status quo in all cases. And then 25, 50, and 75 for Cyprus and Greece. And we had to reduce it a bit for Bulgaria due to differences in the PPP. So after we decide how many attributes we will include and how many levels of these attributes we will include, we need to follow with an experimental design. Why is this necessary? This is necessary because each of the 7 attributes or 8 attributes for Cyprus had countries, sorry, had 8 attributes, each of which had 2, 3, or 4 levels. So that means if we wanted to create a full matrix of different choices that has all the different combinations, that would be huge, like something like 10,000 choices. Of course, we cannot have people choosing between 10,000 different alternatives. No, you want people to have to make 10,000 choices so you can take your results, and of course they won't do it. So what we do in choice experiments is we reduce this design. We are trying to reduce this matrix of all available combinations in a way that we lose the least information that we can lose. So we end up with a size of design that it's much less, but also retains a very big part of the information that we would get if we had people choosing among all the different combinations of attributes and levels. To do this de-efficient design, we wanted some priors because you feed it into the model to make it more efficient. And this came from some pilots we did at the beginning, where we gave people different cards, we estimated some models, and we got some prior values where we used to reduce the size of the design. So the final design was 24 cards, so 24 different cases. But again, this is a very big task for someone to do. So an extra tool we have to reduce the sizes is blocking. So these 24 cards were broken down into 4 blocks, each with 6 choice cards questions. So each respondent had to pick to make choices in 6 different choice cards, like the one I showed you before. And these cards overall, because we've done the experimental design, gives us almost as much as having people choosing all the available alternatives and choices. Now, a main problem with this choice experiment and any other hypothetical stated preference survey is the hypothetical bias. So you have people saying, yes, I prefer protection of the environment, and of course I would pay. Why? Because they know they will not pay at the end of the experiment. So you have this, what we call the yes saying, and this is why stated preference methods usually have a bit of more inflated values than the ones we get in a real market. So if we indeed impose a tax, or if we indeed impose an entrance fee. Of course, this is something that we know, and what it helps is what we call a cheap talk method, which is before having people choosing between the alternatives, you make this introduction telling them that, you know, when people are asked to do such choices, they usually exaggerate. So please be aware that when you make choices about different scenarios which have tax or have an entrance fee, you need to think that if you pay for this, it would be actually money. It would be actual money. So they will be missing from something else in your budget. So keep that in mind when you make choices. It has been found that this kind of scripts actually do make people more aware of their decisions and do reduce the hypothetical bias. So another tool we have to reduce this hypothetical bias is another script, the consequentiality script, which tells people that the actual results of the survey that we are doing now will be passed on to policymakers, so that they have in mind that the next time they will visit the area, the MPA, or the next year if they are citizens, local citizens in Cyprus, this tax may be imposed. So we tell them, be aware, if you exaggerate in your answers, and if you say that, yes, of course, I will pay for the protection, or yes, I don't mind paying more taxes to have a better ecosystem, beware that these results might affect your actual payment next year. And this is also something that we have, that has been found to reduce the hypothetical bias. Now, in terms of the data collection, the original questionnaires were, of course, made in English from us, and each study area translated in the local language, and that was necessary so we can reach more people. And the data collection concluded between September and January 2019 in Cyprus and Bulgaria, and between December 2019 and March 2020 in Greece. The final answers we had, the final results, were 142 responses in total, and 71 of them usable from Greece. In Bulgaria, we had 141, 97 of them usable, and in Cyprus, 156 and 136 of them were usable. When we say usable, is they contained actual information or choices. So we didn't have any dropouts. Of course, these dropout rates might seem high, but they are very usual in stated preferences surveys. So when you reach people, like 50-40% every time, they get bored somewhere in the middle, or they just curious, they click the link and they start the survey, and then when they understand that they have to make an actual thinking, they drop out. So this is normal to have this kind of dropout rates. So after the data collection, what we had were choices from the respondents from this sample between different choice cards, like the one I showed you before. How do we analyze this, and how do we get values? To do so, we use the random utility framework and the random parameters logic model. Of course, this is a bit too technical, and I'm not sure that anyone will be interested, so I will be very quick. What we assume is that the utility, so the utility in economics, we call the happiness people get from a choice, so from their consumption or from their doing something. So what we assume is that the utility they get from choosing one option over the other, for choosing one option, is related to the different attributes. The attributes here were the ecosystem services. So we assume that we have a utility that is linear in the attributes. So the higher carbon sequestration I get, the more happy I am. The higher water clarity I get, the more happy I am. The more taxes I have, the less happy I am. So if we construct the utility function like this, then we can study in each choice what are the trade-offs between the different characteristics. And from these trade-offs that people make, we can estimate a model where we can estimate the betas. So the betas are how much each of these attributes and each attribute levels, how much weight they have in our decision. So how important they are when we get our decisions. And we can estimate that from the trade-offs between the different choices. Now, this is the random utility framework. The random parameters logic is an econometric procedure that is used to estimate these models. And what it has, the advantage it has over other models is that it allows for these betas, these weights, as I said before, this importance to be different between the people that take part in the survey. And this is important because in econometrics methods, usually what we get a beta, which is the mean for all people. So if you have people disagreeing about the measures and you have people agreeing, then the beta you will get in other models will be the mean between these two. So you might get a mean of 2 euros, and this 2 is reflects 50% of people having 100 euros willingness to pay, and 50% of people having 100 euros willingness to accept, so negative willingness to pay values. With RPL, we don't have this problem because we can see the whole distribution of weights. And of course, we can, later on, we can estimate a willingness to pay value for each of the respondents, and not just a general one. So I'm jumping straight to the results. We start from Cyprus, where our results show that the willingness to pay for a fees abundance increased by 20% is almost 30 euros per respondent, with a standard deviation of 11.75. This is related to the RPL, what I was saying before, that this is okay, a mean, but there is also some differences between the different respondents. And that means, if we combine the mean with the standard deviation, that we have a minimum of 0.41 and a maximum of 60 euros per person. Now, the willingness to pay for fees abundance increased by 40% is 50 euros on average, with 20 standard deviation. So that means we have willingness to pay of 70 cents to 100 euros. This might look wide, but this actually what we expect from a model. So not all people care about having increased fees abundance. And these people are the ones with a very low willingness to pay. And these people, probably fishers, they have a very high interest in having higher fees abundance. So this is reflected by the responses. In terms of water clarity, we have 24 euros, and again from a few cents to 50 euros, and etc., etc. This is all the different ecosystem services that we have taken into account in our design. And all this, the most important, and what you observe here, is that at the minimum we have a negative value. These are the policy measures. So another important element for the RPL model is to show us if there are people that are against some policies. So if you have no fishing restrictions, you have a negative willingness to pay, meaning that people are against no fishing restrictions on average. But also you can see that there are people who are willing to pay a lot to have no fishing restrictions at all. So why the mean is negative? Because there are more people and they are more strongly opposed to having no fishing restrictions. But when we have a cost-benefit analysis, we need both. We need to know what is the lowest and what is the highest value. So we need to get an interval, let's say, of the two different parts of the population, because the respondents reflect the population that you want to impose the measures to. And also the same, you see that all policy measures, they almost have contradicting signs as minimum and maximum. So you always have people against environmental policies, and you always have people that are a fan of these policies. This is a visual representation of the willingness to pay values for the different characteristics and for the different levels for Cyprus. And then we turn to Bulgaria. Again, here we have 35%, 35 euros per person for an increase by 5% of fees advantage. a bit higher for 20 to 40% fees advantage. We see here that the difference between these two is very little. So that means that people are a bit insensitive in the increases. They just want fees to be higher, but they don't seem to care a lot or not be able to estimate what exactly does it mean to be 30 or 40%, although we had the visual representation. Water clarity is very important for Bulgaria, aesthetic benefits, etc., etc. Again, here for cleaning the bunkets and for light fishing restrictions, we have people with negative willingness to pay and people with positive. But overall, they were all positive. And finally, for Greece, again, for these policy measures, which are the ones that have the most interesting interpretation, we again have pros and cons. So this is almost zero, but doesn't mean that there is no one cares about coastal protection. It means that you have many people that are a fan of this policy and many people that are not such a fan, and their willingness to pay and their negative willingness to pay, when they counteract, they kill each other. And this is also a visual representation. And this is all. Thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Achilles. It was very interesting to see all the results of the evaluation of the questionnaires, and it was really interesting. So should we proceed in the, if there are no questions from the participants, should we proceed in the demonstration of the DSS, or do you have anything else to add on this?
I have a question. Hi, Achilles, it's Eugenia. Thank you for the presentation. I would like to ask, I saw that you explained, of course, that the number of questionnaires that are ultimately used in their analysis are adequate, let's say. But I saw that in Greece, the number was almost half the actual number used. Is there a way to increase this number?
Well, we usually, in similar surveys, we usually reach more people, so you still have dropouts, but you get the larger sample. Or another way, for example, something that was done in Cyprus, it was to personally contact so have them more engaged in filling the questionnaires. But yes, usually when you don't have a way to immediately contact people, and when you don't have a way to do the questionnaires face-to-face, which is our first choice usually, you increase your pool, so the final number you will get is higher.
So do you think it's possible to do it here, or are you satisfied with these numbers?
Sorry, you mean for Greece?
Yes, yes.
Yes, it could be done. So the more data can come in and can be integrated in the model. Of course, the higher the sample, the more representative. Sorry.
Yeah, the questionnaires are still open. People can find them at our website, so they can still be active in collecting responses. But yeah, it's always a hassle to convince people to respond to a questionnaire.
Yes, but my question. Yes, of course, and the more data you have, it's always better. But my question is, if we are satisfied with this number of data, as regards the results, or if we really have to push more to get more data?
Well, sure. 70 questionnaires is not enough usually. So it's is a small number. Although, as I explained, because for us the estimations are based on choices. So 70 responses mean 70 times 6 choices. So our sample is.
But also, is it comparable between the three study sites? Because the Cyprus or Bulgaria had around 140, more or less, whereas Greece had half.
Yeah,
so
to be honest, well, to be honest, I wouldn't worry about the numbers. What worries me more, and I would tell you that maybe they are not comparable, is representativeness. So maybe the 70 people that finally completed the questionnaire are not representative of the whole population we want to capture, because those who were not interested, for example, they left. So we lost all the low values. So it's not a problem of statistics. This is why I said about the choices, but it's more a matter of representativeness.
Okay, and one last question. Most probably you showed it, but I didn't catch it. The aesthetics, what is the aesthetics value? I mean, it's different from the culture and heritage. So what do you mean exactly with aesthetics? So because I saw that in Greece it was very, very important. So they were willing to pay, but usually the Cyprus meadows in Greece, I think, the willingness to pay for the aesthetics, yes, it was 30%.
For a very high increase, for a low increase was almost 30%. 30
so
euros,
what
sorry.
Aesthetic benefits?
The aesthetic benefits, as we have definition we gave to consumers, included many things, which were biodiversity, habitat, nursery. So it had to do with many things. It was not just the visual part.
You know, because this is very bizarre. Because I mean, seagrass meadows don't like. People don't really respect the seagrass meadows. So in terms of the aesthetic benefits that are provided by the seagrass, this is mainly replies derived by people who actually know about seagrass. Because
well, yeah, this is where you get divers.
People, ordinary people, yeah, but even between divers, no, even divers, no, they don't really care about seagrass. So perhaps this aesthetic benefits is not really.
The idea actually for the aesthetic benefits is mostly related with species that with the biodiversity and the aesthetic benefits from some species and the seabed. So, for example, if we are able to connect the presence of seagrass with endangered species, such as, let's say, dolphins or careta careta or turtles or whatever, we believe that this increases the aesthetic benefit. That's the idea behind the presence of iconic or non-iconic species.
Well,
yeah, so it might not be only aesthetic. This is what I think.
It's not.
So maybe our label was not very successful, but in any case, the descriptions you see here is what the respondents also show.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I have a short question about the representativeness of the respondents in the data. I can ask. Do you have any idea what type of? I mean, you have because it was in the questionnaire, but do you have the data on what kind of people responded to the questionnaires? I mean, if they were local people or people from outside of the area, fishermen or scientists, because I mean, It would be interesting to know that. I'm sure it will be.
It's very important. It's in the deliverable, but I wanted to make the presentation short. It was not short, so we did not include all this. But sure, we do have this data, and maybe let me see if I can show you.
I'm only asking because we had problems getting local people involved in the questionnaires, and we got more responses from colleagues or from people from institutions, from NGOs, and well, because it was an online questionnaire and people are not really happy to spend time.
Yes, so let me.
So it might skew the data. I'm just curious.
Let me see if I have the sampling. So Bulgaria. Yeah. So here you can see the responses, some statistics. Trying to find Bulgaria. So these are the socioeconomic variables, the percentage of people in each age group. Of course, you have people with higher education. This is something that you need to take into account when you talk about representativeness. And also then we had these screening questions. This is for Cyprus. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We'll see it.
Yeah. Sorry, I wasn't prepared for that.
No, it was a concern when we were doing the questionnaire, so I just remember.
Well, yeah, we can share all the results so you can have a look. But it's also typical sometimes not to get local people, especially when you have online questionnaires, because that was also the main idea why we wanted to have face-to-face at the beginning, but then we had various constraints that we could not do it. Any other question?
I think not. So I don't know, now that you have switched computers, if you will be able to show us a bit the DSS, the actual...
Yes, I do have a presentation for the DSS, and because I wanted to be safe, I also have some screenshots from on my presentation. So
perfect. Okay.
It will work. Let me share again. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes, it's okay.
Oh, good. So this presentation is about the DSS tool. It's currently in almost final version. We had some back and forth with the developers this morning, so I think that eventually it will be today or tomorrow fully ready, but it works, just some bug fixes we are working on. And in this presentation, I'm going to show you the methodology used for deriving values on the maps. And then I'm going to show you some screenshots of the different of the different aspects of the DSS. Okay. So as an introduction, the DSS was meant to help people and management authorities to do cost-benefit analysis of new projects that are considered doing in their area, in the MPA area. And of course, cost-benefit analysis is very important in doing decision-making. And it's also numbers that you can present and you can justify your decisions anytime. And of course, the way we have built the RECONNECT DSS is to identify the annual costs and benefits expected by an investment that you want to do in the area, and then compare this investment, this net benefit, to two different scenarios. The one scenario is the status quo, and we say with zero protection benefits, because as we said before, we are valuing changes, so we're not valuing natural capital. So relative to the status quo, we don't have any values. And we also have the usual administrative costs of the status quo. But also we give them the alternative to compare it to a protection scenario in the same area. So the project that we want to implement is compared to the different project, which is fully protecting the area. And that, of course, includes also costs and benefits. So any benefits that arise from the alternative plans, actually from the protection plan, are costs in the cost-benefit analysis, and the costs associated with the alternative. So if we had some extra cost of imposing this protection, are added as benefits into the new project. So as foregone costs, let's say. So if the cost of protecting an area is 1 million, let's say, if instead of protecting it, we do something else, this 1 million is a foregone cost, so it's a benefit to the new project. But also the main source of costs in the protection plans is the environmental benefits we have just described before for the CBA. And this was also the reason we did the choice experiment, so we can get the values for these ecosystem services and put them in the cost-benefit analysis. And this will help managers of protected areas to take into account the benefits of the preservation before they take any decision, and can also be used by environmental managements to see the cost of endangered ecosystem. So the cost and benefits of protecting these ecosystems in terms of ecosystem services. Now, because all projects have a different time frame, so they span, costs and benefits span across different times. Every time we need to use the present value. So the DSS uses the present value, and how it calculates the present value is through a yearly discount rate, I, which is usually around 4% for capital costs or 5% for the European Commission for this is what it is suggested by the European Commission for the CBA methodology. But when we have projects that have a long-term action, so green projects, actually, like protection, we use lower discount rates. And this is to benefit the project over others. So this is because if we have a very high discount rate, the benefits that come very later on, so after 30 years, are almost diminished when we discount. But when we use lower discount rates, when we bring them today, they are higher with lower discount rates. So these are some suggestions about the discount rates. The DSS, as I will show you later on, gives you the option to select which rate you want to use, and also to you can compare between different rates before you decide. So for any, as I said, the concept of the DSS is a CBA analysis between any project, where we call it project one, could be a port, for example, or whatever, versus status quo or versus the benefit.
Εντάξει, το έχουμε ακόμα.
George, your mic is on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. So to do this kind of cost-benefit analysis, as I said, we need, for the alternative projects as well, but also for the project that we study, the cost and benefits. For the status quo, the cost categories that we have identified are staff costs, equipment and depreciation, operating expenses, third-party expenses, travel and promotion publicity. These also come from review on the annual statements of the different management authorities. So we have collected the annual budget statements of these 7 management bodies, and we got from them the different cost categories, but also their actual figures, so how much they spend each year. So this is it. Mainly you see staff costs for most of the management bodies, but also you see how much is from other activities as well. So in order to be able to use these values in the MPA areas that we are considering, we have converted them into values per hectare. So we divided by the size of these management bodies of the sites, and we got a value for each of the cost categories. We got a value per hectare, and we also had the total value of management. These mean values for each cost category is what we use as a default in the DSS. But as I will also explain later, these default values can change. So if someone has a different estimate, because we did that because we didn't have any specific costs for the case study areas. That was very early on in the project. So when you are trying to assess a new project and you know the case study area and you know the management body, the DSS gives you the opportunity to change these values into your own estimates, as well as any other values. So all the values that we have as defaults in the DSS, they can be altered by the user. I will show you how. So after we do the calculation of the status quo categories, sorry. So these are, yes, after we do the calculation, we use these values as cost and benefits of the alternative project. So if the alternative project is the status quo versus the project that we are considering, these costs are added as benefits, as we said, in the form of foregone costs in the final estimation. Now, in terms of protection costs protection might also induce some extra cost in these different categories that we said before. So instead of having the status quo, if we decide to protect the area, we might need more staff, we might need more operating expenses, we might need more promotion publicity, etc., etc. So in the DSS and in the file that we are using as calculation, we can have different percentages of the cost categories for the protection. But protection, unlike status quo, aside the costs, has extra benefits. And these benefits we have identified before in the work we've done with the questionnaires. And these benefits are, benefits in terms of fish abundance, water clarity, or in general, in terms of all the ecosystem services we considered in the choice experiment. Of course, we may have others. Again, I'm stressing this again, but the DSS and this task in specific, we took into account only these ecosystem services. The DSS is very flexible, so if someone later on wants to change these values or want to add more values, he can do it, or she can do it. Now, for each of the grids in the map, in each of these case study areas, in order to calculate the total benefit, we had to sum all the benefits coming from the different ecosystem services and the different ecosystems. We had seagrasses, we had soft bottom and hard bottom, these three ecosystems. And of course, we had the ecosystem services we said before. So the DSS, what it does, it goes in each grid and it adds all the different benefits coming from the protection of this grid, from the ecosystems within the grid, and in turn from the ecosystem services coming from these ecosystems. And here the maximum willingness and the minimum willingness to pay is of course the minimum and maximum. No, that's not a minimum over maximum, is minimum or maximum, is the estimate of minimum and maximum willingness to pay that we got from the CE before. So the values I presented last in my previous presentation. Now, how do we assign these values to the different ecosystem, to the different qualities of the ecosystem? Because in each grid, we also have information of how good, let's say, of how bad is the ecosystem, the seagrass or the hard and soft bottom below it. So for each grid, we have also data on the quality. That means that we can assign a different value in each of the ecosystems based on their quality. And why we need to do that? Because this reflects the idea that ecosystems in a very good ecological status will give us much more to protect than others who are not in very good ecological status. Again, in terms of ecosystem services. So the mapping we did between quality and willingness to pay values was for seagrass of bad ecological status and soft and hard apparatus of good or high ecological status. We assigned the willingness to pay for a low increase in the attribute. So for example, for fish abundance, we assigned the willingness to pay for a 5% increase. For seagrass of poor or moderate ecological status, we have a medium increase. So for example, fish abundance, again, we have 20% increase, which was our medium level of increase. So we assigned the willingness to pay for a 20% increase. And for seagrass of good or high, we assigned the high increase in the attribute. So we assign the willingness to pay for a 40% efficient balance, for example. And this is the same for all ecosystem services. So like my example with the efficient balance, we do it with all ecosystem services. Now, when we have two levels, like in Cyprus and Greece for water clarity, the poor and bad economic, moderate ecological status of seagrass, not soft and hard substrates, they get the lower value, and the higher value, we assign it to the good or high ecological status. Again, this reflects the same idea. So better ecosystems, you have better ecosystem service, more ecosystem service. And the same for preservation of cultural heritage. So for each grid, depending on the percentage of ecosystem they have, so within this hectare of area, what percent is covered by seagrass, what percent is covered by hard, or what percent is covered by soft bottom, we can estimate a value for this grid. For all countries, but for Cyprus, we had an extra challenge that was because the coverage for the ecosystems comes in intervals, so we didn't have specific numbers for these grids. So it was 0 to 30, 30 to 50, etc., etc. That is not a problem for the low values because we estimate a lower and upper bound. And it was not a problem because the sum of the lower bound of all the ecosystems was always less than 100%. So if we take the lower bound of all the three different habitats, they never add to more than 100%. So that the lower bound, we used it as it is. We just use the lower bounds of the interval. For the upper bound, this was a problem because the upper bounds could add to more than 100. So if you had 0 to 50% Posidonia, 0 to 50% hard and soft bottom, you will have 150% coverage in this grid, which is, of course, not logical. So the value that we would estimate in that case would be huge, will be higher than expected. So in order to avoid this problem, instead of adding the higher, all the higher intervals from the three habitats, we did the classification of the habitats. So starting from Posidonia, then going to hard bottom, and then going to soft bottom, and we were filling the blanks, let's say. So if the higher level of Posidonia was 50%, we took it all, and then we added hard bottom. And if something was left from this, we added soft bottom, and vice versa. Otherwise, we added the difference. So if we had 50%, the higher level, the higher interval of Posidonia was 50%, and the higher level of hard bottom was 30. Even if for soft bottom the higher would be 50, we will only add 20% there. So they all add to 100. So the final lower and upper net benefits for a management measure was taken as a sum of the different grids that it affects. So when you selected an area with 2 grids, let's say, you added the benefits and the costs within each grid, and then you have a final value for the project. But of course, this was only in terms of the costs, of the operational costs that I explained before, and in terms of the environmental costs due to ecosystem services lost or gained. This does not include any policy yet. So the DSS gives you also the opportunity to add some policies. And of course, when adding policies, you add the costs and benefits that we have also estimated with the choice experiment. So when you add protection as the alternative cost, for example, it lets you tell him that protection will come with more fishing restrictions. So when you add this into your model, it adds the cost or benefit from this policy measure. And the cost of benefit comes from the willingness to pay for this policy measure, or the negative willingness to pay from this measure. And as a result, the final estimate takes into account also these different policy measures, and you get a sum overall grids, overall operational costs, overall ecosystem services, and overall policy measures. That was on the methodology. Now, this is how the DSS looks. The tabs you can see here, there are three. We are using the DSS scenario. These three tabs, they do other stuff like comparing the countries, Bulgaria, Albania, Greece, their GDP, there are different variables that you can choose to compare the countries. And this is more like a way to describe, to do an introduction of your model than you don't actually need them as inputs in your scenario analysis, which is the main reason of the DSS. So this is the main screen of the DSS scenario. First, let me tell you that it's in Python, so it's free. You can install it on a computer or a server, and then you can run it from there. It runs on any browser. When you run the Python, then it opens in any browser. And the first step you need to do is to load these two files, the CBA and the calculations files. And what are these files? I will need to show you. Okay, so this is the calculation file. This is a file that has the calculations from the benefits in each grid of the map. So these are pre-filled by us for each country, and they are based on the values and the methodology I described before. So you just need to take it as it is and upload it on the DSS, drag and drop into the DSS. And this gives you the benefit, the lower and upper benefit of protection in each of the grids of the map. So that goes the calculation. Then we have the CBA. This is also pre-filled, but this is also something that you need to fill because for your project, when you want to estimate the value of your project. As you see, it has different tabs. And what you can do here, you go like project one. This is the project that you want to consider as doing. And you add the different cost categories for your project. So how much equipment would you need per year for 30 years? What is the construction costs per year? What is the labor cost per year? What is the operation cost per year, etc., etc. So here, or you can add lines if you like, you add the different costs that you expect from your project, for the project that you're considering, or you want to do the cost-benefit analysis for. And also at the end here, you add the revenues of your project. So what revenues do you expect? Here we expect that we have 1,000 euros for the first 4 years, and then 2,000, then another revenue. So you add the different revenue streams and what you expect each year. And these are the values that will be used for the cost-benefit analysis of the project. Now, this part of the Excel file, as you can see, is pre-filled. And it's pre-filled based on the values, for example, we got for the staff costs, for the values we got from the other management authorities, equipment and depreciation again from the other management authorities, etc., etc. And we consider them as being stable over the time. But of course, you can change this if you have a different estimates. You can place yours here, or here, or here. And then you have the protection costs, which are calculated based on the status quo. So here you have staff costs plus 10%. So this is the staff cost of the status quo plus 10%. Same for equipment, same for travel expenses, promotion. Then you have 20%. Then you have 30%, etc., etc. So once you change this will take the value accordingly. And why do we need this? Because when we will get to choose what are the relevant costs of the protection, we may think that staff cost will be 20%, equipment and depreciation will be 30% higher, etc., etc. So you can add them later in your cost-benefit analysis. Also, what we have here is the policies and their corresponding values from the questionnaires. So these are the values per year we got from the questionnaires. Well, and this is not the updated one, but anyway, so this is how it works. You will have the minimum, the lower bound of the willingness to pay, and the higher value. And when you complete this, you upload it again with the calculations. So this is the first step. You complete the values in these two files and you upload them on the DSS. The second step is to choose a layer that you can see on the map. That doesn't affect your CBA analysis, your cost benefit, because when you choose a place on the map, it takes into account all the ecosystems that are below that grid. But in terms of seeing the place, the spots that you would like to choose, these 4 layers will help you do it. Then you select the country. So in the layer I choose benefit. The benefit includes all 3 ecosystems. So the value of all these 3 ecosystems, the value index. And then you choose the country. So let's say I choose Bulgaria, Cyprus. Here on your right, you see the map, you see the grids, and the intensity is reflect the value. So the darker it is, the more the value index is higher. So the more value index higher means it has more ecosystems below, or more ecosystem services are affected. It has a higher value of protection. In the second step, you choose the project. What is the project that you want to assess? So here it was the project 1. And then you choose the alternative project. The alternative project, as I explained before, could be the status quo or protection. Then you have the interest rate. So that will be used in the discounting. And then when you choose all these, it lets you select the project cost categories and the project revenue categories. These are the categories that we have in the Excel file. So if you add more categories there, more cost categories there, they will appear here, and you will be able to select them as relevant cost categories for the project. But it also lets you select cost categories of the alternative project, so of the status quo here. If it wasn't the status quo and it was the protection, I would have much more cost categories here. Let me see if I have a screenshot of this. No. So again, these are the cost categories that we have in the Excel file. And you can choose to let them in, or you can, so if travel expenses are not something that you have in your status quo right now, you just take it out. Or you cannot, maybe you don't even have to have it into the Excel file, so it won't appear here in any case. And then you select the time frame. So you can drag this right on left and see for how many years you want to assess your project. And the last step is here on the right, to select the area that you want to consider for this project. So here I have dragged this rather randomly. And based on this, on the values from the Excel files, the map and the ecosystem services that are assigned to these grids on the map, you will get something like this, which gives you the costs and revenues of the project per year. And this that breaks down your cost and revenues by the categories you have in the Excel file. And this is the net present value for the project, which is negative before year 6, and then it turns positive. And this is, the last screen. This is another way that you can then, if you are done with your analysis and you want to see whether it's worth or whether it's better or worse to do it somewhere else, you can go back in the screen and choose another area and see what is the difference in costs and revenues and how it affects the net present value. I think this is it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Achilles.
I tried to make it short, so I don't know if it's comprehensive, but
No, it's okay. It's really interesting. It just needs some knowledge from the stakeholders and the managers so that they could fill in the Excel file regarding, the cost of each project. But it's information that they would probably already have. They would know how much they want to spend for building a port, for example, or
exactly.
whatever. So it's really interesting that that we can get this to work, and that if the revenue is not high, people can choose a different area and they can compare between them, and it's really nice. I don't know if anyone has any questions on this. As soon as it is fully operating, we will find a way to incorporate in our website also, or in the LifeWatch Greece platform. We will sort it out and then distribute a manual on how people can use it and access it, because it's always easier for people to go online for these things and not to run them locally. So
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else has any questions. No, I see not.
Okay. All covered.
I think so, yeah. So that's it. Let's say that's a wrap for the workshop. Of course, you can contact us anytime. If you can feel free to contact us if you have questions later on, or if you want to comment on anything that you have seen today. It was really nice to do this workshop, although a bit challenging given the times. If you would like, we can all, if you want, of course, we can open our cameras to have a final screenshot moment, just to finish the day as a wrap up. If you want, of course. Thank you for staying until the end of the day. And
I'm sorry for the delay with all the problems I had to face today. It's not a good day.
It's okay, don't worry. Everyone is really busy these days with online workshops and things. It's very common to have delays in these things. Okay,
Thank you.
So great. Thank you again, and yeah, keep in touch, and yeah, stay safe.
Thank you.
Bye.
Stay safe.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.